Welcome to the Francis Micro Homestead. Here are 5 more foods to better your home cooking meals and to better the quality of the foods that you eat. So let's take a look. Our first food is mashed potatoes. It's easy to freeze dry and it's easy to reconstitute. It's a perfect side dish for pretty much any meal. Plus, it can be used to thicken up soups and other stews that you may have. So let's take a look at it. The basic ingredients for mashed potatoes is 3 ingredients: potatoes, milk, and butter. This recipe calls for 8 to 10 pounds of potatoes, a half a cup of milk, and a half a stick of butter. Wash and peel the potatoes and dice them into similar sized pieces and put them in the pot of cold water. Place it on the stove top and cook until the potatoes are tender. Add the milk and butter to the potatoes and mash. No need to overwork the potatoes as they will blend after being freeze-dried. Lightly spread out the potatoes on the trays, making sure not to go above the rim of the trays. Here's the settings for when I freeze-dry the potatoes. Once they are done, add the potatoes to the blender and blend to a fine powder. Once it's all blended, add to mason jars and seal for storage. To reconstitute, add the desired amount to the bowl and heat up water on the stove or in the microwave to a boiling temperature. Gradually add it to the mixture while fluffing with a fork. Continue to add water until all the dry powder has been incorporated. When I freeze dry my potatoes, I do not add salt and pepper when cooking. This allows me to use the mashed potatoes in stews and soups to help thicken them without adding more salt. Once the potatoes are done, add the salt and pepper to taste.
Okay, our next food is pancake mix. So this is great because it's the same reconstitution process like you buy in a box at the store, but it has way less preservatives. So even your kids will like this one because it's so fast and easy.
Our pancake recipe makes roughly 30 pancakes, and it consists of 3 cups of flour, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, 6 tablespoons of sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 3 eggs, 3 tablespoons of vanilla extract, 3 3/4 cups of milk, and 6 tablespoons of melted butter. Start off by mixing all the dry ingredients together in one bowl and the wet ingredients into another bowl. Make sure that the eggs and milk are room temperature as it helps mix the melted butter in with the rest of the wet ingredients. Once the two mixtures are done, pour in the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients bowl and mix to combine until the batter has no clumps. Evenly transfer the mixture onto your sheets. In the past, I've tried to freeze dry the wet ingredients and combine them afterwards with the dry ingredients, but they didn't reconstitute properly and tasted off, like eating raw flour with eggs. Here are the settings to our freeze dryer. Once they come out, add them to the blender and blend until it's a fine powder. Once it is done, move it over to a mason jar or 3 for storage. Reconstituting is simple, just like having the store-bought box. Add the desired amount to the bowl and just add water until all the clumps have been incorporated to the right consistency. If it's too runny, add more mixture. If it's too thick, add more water. After it is mixed, cook it to your preference and enjoy. Our next food is our freeze-dried potato chips. So we have potatoes here and carrots here, and these are a great substitute for the oily chips that you buy at the store. Um, they're great because you can use potatoes, you can use carrots, and you can use pretty much any type of root-based vegetable to make your own homemade potato chips. But not only are they homemade, but you can make them however flavor you want. For for these ones, we used a garlic parmesan rub for the potatoes, and we used barbecue sauce for the carrots. Start off with your potatoes or vegetables of your choosing and slice them with a mandolin or by hand to the desired thickness. Boil or steam them on the stove at low heat until they are tender, but not too tender. You don't want to overcook them as it makes it difficult to stir and combine. Drain and add to a large mixing bowl. Add your desired flavoring. In this video, we are using a ranch parmesan rub, but you can use anything you desire. In the past, we've used powdered ranch mix, homemade sour cream and onion mix, and even some steak rub. Add the desired amount and freeze dry it to these settings. Depending on the seasoning you're using, they may stick together, but in this case they slide right off the tray. Whenever we do chips, we always do carrots as well. The best flavor that we love that goes great with the carrots is barbecue. Simply add the desired amount and add it to the tray. Once they come out, they will stick together due to the barbecue sauce, but just add them to the bag, give them a gentle squeeze, and it will break them up. We usually put these in bags as they do not last on the shelves. So the next food is our homemade macaroni. Now this does take some process. It does take a lot of time and a lot of energy, but it's homemade noodles, and we love homemade noodles. The problem with it is when you make the homemade noodle at home, when you freeze the dough, it only keeps for a couple of weeks before it needs to be used. But by freeze drying it, you have instant homemade macaroni, homemade noodles that can be reconstituted anytime you wish. So it doesn't need to have, you don't need to do a noodle making process like we did. You can easily make spaghetti or fettuccine or tiny pieces of noodle from just rolling it out, and that will freeze dry just fine. Our pasta recipe is as follows: 4 cups of flour, 6 egg yolks, 2 large eggs, 4 tablespoons of olive oil, 2 teaspoons of salt, and additional water if needed. The easiest way to mix the pasta dough is in the kitchen mixer. If you don't have a mixer, you can do this by hand on the countertop. Add the yolks, eggs, olive oil, and salt to the flour. Gradually mix with a fork until it starts to come together. If you have a mixer, add the dough arm and start at a low speed. If you're doing this by hand, start to mix the dough by hand and knead it on a well-floured countertop. You want the dough to not be too wet or dry. If it isn't coming together and feels dry, add a little water. A little water goes a long way. If it's too wet, add flour until the dough comes together and is no longer sticky. It shouldn't be too sticky and should roll around the mixer as the arm works the dough. You will need to knead the dough for 10 minutes or so. Once the dough has gone through the kneading process, pull it out of the mixer and add it to a floured surface. Knead it a few times and form it into a ball. Cover it with plastic wrap or a baking cloth to keep it from drying out and let it rest for at least 30 minutes. When you are ready, form your pasta. We usually make spaghetti or fettuccine with our dough, but decided to try out a pasta press we bought online. Took a lot of figuring out of how to keep the pasta in the right shape and from clumping together. I had to use a lot of extra flour from keeping them from sticking together, and found that I had to let the noodles air dry for a few hours before cooking them. You can freeze dry your pasta before you cook it, but I decided to cook this batch because I wanted to get rid of the flour that was covering the pasta. When cooking the pasta before freeze drying it, cook it about halfway and then drain and add it to the trays. For this pasta, we use the following freeze drying settings. Most of the pasta came out perfect, however, some clumped together. When you're ready to reconstitute, add the desired amount of pasta to boiling water. Depending on the thickness of your pasta, this could take some time to rehydrate the pasta and complete the cooking. For this macaroni, it took about 15 minutes on the stove before the noodles were done. To go with the pasta, I reconstituted some cheese mix from our last video and added the noodles to it.
Okay, our fifth item is spices. So here we have onion, cilantro, garlic, spinach. We have 2 onion. And then this one in the front is a new one. We've tried caramelized onion powder. So these are great because we know where the herbs came from. And freeze drying herbs is better than dehydrating or baking, because freeze drying retains more of the nutrients.
So what we do is we freeze dry a batch of like onion powder, and we keep it in the mason jars, and then when our containers in the pantry go low, we just fill those up with what we have in the mason jars. So these will last longer since they are airtight, and saves us money in the long run. For this video, we are showing you the process of making caramelized onion powder. You can use this same process for onion powder, garlic powder, cilantro, basil, thyme, spinach, paprika, chili powder, and any other herbs you grow in your garden. You can freeze dry the items raw if you like the strong flavors, or give them a little cook before. We have been wanting to try caramelized onions in the freeze dryer for a long time. When we finished this batch, we added it to baked potatoes and was pleasantly surprised. These can easily go on salads, burgers, steaks, soups, and whatever else you can think of.
So these recipes and ingredients are things that we use in our home and in our family. We only have 5 people in our family. Obviously, if you have a larger family, or if you have a larger freeze dryer than we have, then you can alter the recipes or what ingredients you use to fit your situation.
So these times that we have set on these recipes for drying times, they do differ depending on location, the moisture content of the recipe that you used. But this is what worked for us. Like I say in the past, you cannot over freeze dry your meal. So if in doubt, run it longer than it needs to. We love making these videos and sharing our recipes with you. And there's a lot out there that we still haven't learned and still would like to learn. If you have any ideas on what we could freeze dry next, leave it in the comment below. But we always enjoy reading your comments and answering questions and also learning from you as well. It's a wonderful community that we're in. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. Of course, we love reading your comments. But again, thank you for watching and thank you for sharing.